All right, everybody, welcome back to the Realty Rundown from the Nic Wyse team. I'm your host, Nic Wyse, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Nathan Schwartz. Today, we are diving into an important but sometimes overlooked aspect of real estate, title insurance. So to help us break it all down, we have a special guest, Adam Hooten, who is a title insurance expert. And yep, we are holding you out to be an expert.
That's pretty big shoes to fill right there. Thanks, Nick.
I think those that know you would agree with that sentiment. Yeah. Absolutely. So Adam is here to answer our title insurance questions. And Adam, thank you for joining us.
You bet, guys. I'm glad to be here and glad to be a part of this. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Title insurance is one of those things that buyers and sellers hear about but may not fully understand. So today we're getting into the details, what it is, why you need it, and how it protects your investment.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah. So we want to start real basic because, again, a lot of people have no idea what title insurance is. We see that all the time. When we're meeting somebody, maybe it's the first house they've sold. They bought the house. They didn't even think about title insurance because they were so overwhelmed with everything. So, Adam, can you explain exactly what is title insurance and why is it important for both buyers and for lenders?
Yeah. So I'll give you the definition of title insurance and then we'll kind of go from there. So by definition, title insurance protects buyers and lenders from financial losses due to property title issues. It's a one-time premium that's paid at closing. So what I mean by the one-time premium is that title insurance, you pay at one time at closing. It's not like your homeowners insurance or your car insurance where you pay today, going the month forward, going the month forward, going the month forward. It protects you. That kind of insurance protects you for what is to come, I guess you could say. Title insurance is you pay that premium one time for the day of closing, and it protects you, the buyer, for everything that is behind that seller may have had come up on titles during the past. So when we talk about who pays what or what it does and what it protects is really it protects the buyer and the lender for any liens, judgments, encumbrances on the property.
Yeah. So what's the difference between an owner's title insurance and lender's title insurance?
It's a good question. So there are two types of title insurance, an owner's policy and a lender's policy is what we call it. A lender's policy protects a mortgage broker from problems on a certain with the properties of a title. It could protect things like the interest in the property for as a security for the mortgage. It decreases as the amount of the mortgage goes down. So each month as that buyer pays their mortgage, that mortgage lender's policy kind of decreases as it goes down. And at the end of the day, it's in effect until the mortgage is paid off. Owner's title insurance is the bigger one. That protects the homeowner from any kind of financial losses with the issues of the title. So things like that would be unpaid taxes. So if there's unpaid taxes that come up on the property, if there's document errors. So let's say we as a title company record a deed that may have a spelling error or the legal description may be incorrect. Those things are going to be protected by title insurance. Fraud, that's another one. I know we might talk about fraud a little bit later on. Good, that's a good one. That's a huge one right now out there. So yeah. Fraud is another big one that it also protects that homeowner against. There's 45 or 50 other different things that it protects about, but really at the end of the day, it's going to protect that buyer and give them that peace of mind. You may hear me say that a couple different times today, but it gives them that peace of mind knowing that they are free and clear when they own that property.
And I wanted to ask because, yeah, you brought it about in a really good way. You know, like you said, auto insurance, you have to have it. You're literally forced to have it by the state. You know, homeowners insurance, if you have a mortgage, you're forced to have it. Mm-hmm. Your mortgage provider is going to force that on you. If you cancel your homeowner's insurance, they will actually mandate new insurance and charge you for it. Title insurance is not that way. And yet, out of the hundreds of houses I've sold, I've only had two that declined to not get an owner title insurance policy on it. Are there situations where you could say it's good that it's optional?
You know, the state of Indiana, I don't know if there's other states out there, but in Indiana, that buyer, we've had agents and lenders and buyers come to us and say, why do I need to buy this? Why do I need to have title insurance? It is optional from my research. And they're not incorrect. It is optional in the state of Indiana. However, if we're issuing a title policy, if we're doing that search, if we're doing that closing, if we're doing those end of things where we're recording those documents, sending out payoffs, and we are doing all of that stuff, we have to do, that's called an insured closing. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything for that buyer. And then at the end of the day, when all that stuff's done, we're issuing a policy. Policy issued means that those buyers are getting a clear on that title. They make sure that when they take ownership to that property, they are getting a free and clear title. So it is optional, but I don't know any any lenders out there either that will close on a deal without being protected. That's the big thing. The mortgage lenders are not going to put they're not going to make themselves at risk if they don't have some sort of insurance that this deal is free and clear and that we're going to be protected.
Yeah, that's good. We'll move on to the next segment, how title issues can impact a sale. So what are some common title issues that can come up during a real estate transaction?
Oh gosh, how long do you have?
Give us one or two. Yeah.
There's a lot. So judgments are a big one. Obviously, when we search a property, the judgment section or the Schedule B2 on our title insurance is what it's called. You're going to see judgments pop up. You're going to see liens pop up. You may see a dissolution of marriage, which is also known as that's a divorce. Those are things that are going to pop up. We have to clear those, which means that we have to make sure that all of that stuff is taken care of and addressed before we can close with clear title. Unpaid taxes, delinquent taxes, easements, those are all things that will come up on title and also be addressed as we go.
Well, because tell me if I'm incorrect, but those kinds of things are basically attached to the title. So if somebody goes to sell their house and hasn't done this search and hasn't discovered those things, you close on the house, you just accumulated a whole bunch of baggage along with it, which could be mechanics liens, other liens, tax liens, these different things. Poof, now they're yours.
They're yours.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that's how it worked. So I'm sure obviously these issues come up. We see it all the time and usually they're pretty minor. They're often what you expect. They're there's a lien on there. Well, yeah, that's our mortgage that we know about.
Right.
And like you mentioned, we send the payoff authorization into you guys. We take care of all that for our clients. We send it into you guys. Payoff is done through closing. They don't have to really lift a finger. So it's definitely a hand-in-hand thing that we do with you guys as title insurance companies to take care of that. Now, when these issues come up that aren't so cut and dry, have you seen them where they can delay a closing significantly or even sometimes kill a deal?
Yeah, killing a deal is, we're going to get it done eventually. It's going to, a lot of times more so delayed. And probably one of the biggest things that we have seen in the past, or an example of something is that if you have a seller who is selling a property and we've done that search on their property, they're clean, we're paying everything off, but then they're going and buying another property. So let's say you've got them selling and then they're buying another property. Sell first, buy second. In that time between the sale and the buy, they have to make sure that there's nothing that gets out there attached to them. What I mean by that is before they sell that property and they're excited to go buy that other property, they may go out and buy furniture or a washer and dryer for their new home. Sometimes that can attach to them as individuals that will then attach to their house that they are selling but haven't sold yet. So when we do our search right before closing, we do what's called a date down. We just make sure that that record is clean right before closing to make sure that nothing like this has popped up. And they don't understand that sometimes that stuff attaches to them, but they're thinking, well, it's for my next house, but it really attaches to the house that they own because legally they have not transferred title to that new buyer yet. Right. So that's something that can delay closing, for example. We actually just had something like that the other day, and it was interesting because the buyers, they were innocent. The sellers, they were buyers, and they didn't really realize that that's what happens, but it does. It happens.
Yeah, for sure. And we may have discussed this just a little bit, but if a judgment comes up on the property before closing, what are steps taken to resolve it? I mean, is it just settled at the time, before all the paperwork is signed at closing, or how's it work?
Yeah, so we get when we do our search, that judgment will come up and it will say judgment in favor of XYZ, company or attorney or whatever that judgment is. When that judgment is recorded from day one, it gives the original amount of the judgment. So it could be a $1,500 judgment for whatever that means. However, it could have been recorded 5 years ago. And in that 5 years, maybe that seller has been making payments to reduce that principal, but maybe they haven't. So there could be other fees and interest tacked onto that. So what we do is we reach out to that judgment creditor. It may be an attorney, it may be somebody local or not local. We get what's called just like a payoff, just like Nick was saying, where we get a payoff for the seller's mortgage. We're going to get a payoff of that judgment and put that on our settlement statement and close that out and pay for it at closing. So that'll be taken care of before we transfer title. Really, why we do that and what we do that for is because our main job is to transfer title, clear title to that new buyer. We won't transfer title. We won't close on a property, even if it is delayed, until that all takes place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously that's the reason nobody wants to buy a new house and have all these what ifs, what's
right.
if this is actually going on. So I've been amazed. Like I said, there's been 2 times when they said, no, we're good. And I'm like, okay. In both situations, again, I was on the transaction, but they were not my buyers. And I'm like, okay.
Well, good luck.
I know my sellers are good people and I trust them as well, but boy, you don't know what could have been attached even further beyond than that. It's not just always necessarily the people that just bought it. It could be something from years ago. It could be a ghost on the title. And maybe we'll be able to talk about what that might mean.
It's the biggest investment of somebody's life a lot of times.
There you go.
Yeah.
For a very small fee or for a very small price, a one-time fee, it gives you that protection to go forward and just know that, hey, this is my house that I bought and it's free and clear.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, it is a smaller fee in the grand scheme, and it's definitely worth paying that. So you walk into your house knowing you're good. It's your house.
That's right.
But as we mentioned fees, that's actually what I kind of wanted to get to next, a little bit, talk about some of the costs and then maybe some of the misconceptions as well. But for now, since we're talking about fees, as I understand it again, it's not as I understand it, I know it to be true. There's not just, hey, this is the cost for title insurance. It is a variable cost. And there's probably some metric out there as far as how that's calculated.
So obviously in your guys' world, this, everything's negotiable, right? I mean, there's no cut and dried. This is who pays for this, or this is how it is, or whatever. And really on our side of things, we have typically seller pays for these fees and typically buyer pays for these fees. From a title insurance, who pays for what on title insurance? Typically the seller pays for the owner's policy, which is the title insurance. Even though the buyer is getting that portion and they are taking advantage of having that title insurance policy, it's typical that the seller pays for that. That is charged. That can go on a sliding scale, I guess, for the title companies. And it's based off of the sales price of the house. So if you have $100,000 house, I don't have any fee sheets in front of me, so I can't give you an exact price. But if you have a $100,000 house, your title insurance may be this. But if you have a $500,000 house, it's going to, obviously go up. That's how we base our fees on title insurance for the seller. The lender's policy is typically paid for by the buyer, but again, that's negotiable as well. And that's always going to be a flat fee of what it is. It doesn't matter if you have that $100,000 house or that $500,000 house. That's going to be a flat fee across the board from that standpoint.
Yeah. So there's also some misconceptions out there about title insurance as well. Do you have one myth that you hear often, and what would be the reality?
I think a big misconception is for like new construction. It's new. Why would you need to have a title search done, or why would you need inspections, or why would you need this? And just because it's new doesn't mean that it's clean. There may be, that builder may have incurred sewer charges or HOA dues that have kind of piled up that would be passed on to that new buyer. A lot of the biggest thing that we see with new construction could be mechanics liens. And a mechanics lien is basically where contractor comes in, does work, maybe they put the roof on, and that builder or buyer has not paid that roofer to do their job. So they can go ahead and slap a mechanics lien on that property when we do our search, we find that mechanics lien is out there, has to be paid off, and away we go. So that's one of the biggest myths. Another quick one too is that cash buyers don't need title insurance. That's a myth to me. I mean, again, just because they're paying cash for it and they don't have a lender, they're still taking that risk of not knowing what is on that title from that seller. Kind of like what Nick said, he's had a couple of them in the past. So even if it's a cash sale, you still want to get it. Again, the reality is, for, like we said, for that small investment, getting that peace of mind as a buyer, knowing that they have free and clear title to that home is really what it is.
That's funny that you mentioned cash, because they both were cash. Actually,
I kind of wondered.
Yeah.
The one was cash, and the other one was actually daddy's cash. And I think that daddy was like, we don't need to spend any more money of mine, and like just forego that. And yeah, again, it's one of those like, okay, kind of a moment.
Buyer beware. I mean, that's kind of what we
say. Caveat emptor.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just because you're paying cash doesn't mean that there couldn't be judgments and liens that are running with them.
That's right.
I would argue the opposite, right? Like, you know, not that anyone would ever want to walk away from a mortgage, but you can walk away from a home and a mortgage a lot easier than you can walk away from $300,000 cash that you slapped down for a home.
Correct.
So I would be extra provoked to get title insurance if I was buying with cash.
Yep.
Fortunately, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have enough cash to buy.
I don't either.
Nobody on this podcast has enough cash to buy. Well, anyway, we had mentioned fraud earlier, and I do want to give you a chance to talk about that, because it seems like there maybe has been a rise lately. Some of the stuff I'm reading is indicating there's kind of a rise in title fraud or something called deed theft. Is that something that you could speak to?
So fraud is rampant. Just in the last couple of weeks in our Meridian footprint, not here locally in Elkhart, but in our footprint of our offices, we've had 2 cashier's checks, fraudulent cashier's checks. So we have to be very cautious. We have to be very careful about what we do and how we do it. Wiring instructions are not going to go out via email to a buyer or to an agent or to anybody. We're going to give them verbally over the phone, or they can stop in and get a copy of them. If you ever get wiring instructions from Meridian Title via email, they're not from us. You know, there's a lot of cybersecurity measures that are going on, and I'm getting kind of into some things that, you know, besides fraud, but another thing that's fraud, a lot of what we've seen lately is vacant land, believe it or not. Not just here locally, but nationally, there's a lot of fraud going on with vacant land properties. Yeah. And I don't know really what the reason is for vacant land, other than possibly the fact that nobody has a homestead on the property. You know, a house, and they're not living there. So it's easy for these fraudsters to come in and fraudulently buy or sell a piece of vacant land.
I've got a story for you about that. I think I'm actually not embroiled, but maybe managed to avoid something like that. I mean, just this past week and a half or so, it's been going on. I got an email, kind of random. The email is a Gmail. So always, you know, you look a little extra things like that. And it was literally the name of the homeowners. Was the Gmail. I was like, that's a little different, but okay. Right. So they wanted to get a price on potentially selling this land. And the way they wrote the email, so it all comes to me as an email. There's no phone call. They don't even have their phone number in the email, although they've got all these other pieces of information about this land. They want to know what price to be put on it. So we talked for a couple of emails back and forth. I gave them a CMA on it, and they said, great, we want to list it right now for that price. And it didn't settle well with me. And so I responded back to them. This is just yesterday. I responded back and said, hey, you know, it's great that you want to go forward with this. I'll be happy to list this land for you at that price, but I feel like we need to have a further conversation. You know, we haven't met. This land is here in Indiana. I do see on title that you live in Florida. So, you know, sure, you're not here to meet with me in person, but let's have a conversation before we go any further. They've been very responsive up until now. Yeah. That email went out about 24 hours ago, and I haven't heard a peep since. So I'm pretty sure that's exactly what that was. They're trying to get it listed. They're trying to get it all closed real quick, remotely, get it, you know, get the wire sent from you guys, and poof. Then we find out later they never were the people that own the property. And now those poor people are embroiled. So it is out there. You know, that is here in Elkhart County. So it's definitely something, agents, if you're listening, be hyper vigilant, be aware of what's going on around you, and just do those extra things. We all want to make sales, but just be really, really careful because they're here. Like Adam mentioned, the hackers, the cyber spammers, all these people, they're out there. And unfortunately, they're using their big brains for things that aren't so great.
Yeah, there is a website I'd like to share, Nick. It's propertyfraudalert.com. And it's a free, it's a county. You can choose your state through the country. And I was on it this morning, and Elkhart County is one of the counties that participates in this. And it's a place where you can fill out a little bit of information about you as your personal home. And it basically gives the recorder's office an alert if your name is ever mentioned in any kind of fraud or any kind of stuff. So I don't want to say it's locking your property down, but it kind of gives that little extra incentive to do this, because what if something does happen? So check it out. It's propertyfraudalert.com.
Okay.
Awesome, man. I'm going to put that in.
Put that in the comments or whatever. But that's a good place to go check out.
For sure. Yeah. And Adam, as we kind of phase things out here, are there any upcoming changes or trends in the title insurance industry that buyers and sellers should be aware of?
I think the couple of biggest things is the cybersecurity. We touched on that a little bit, but that us just being more aware and possibly asking for more documentation. Just to prove that seller is who they are, or that buyer is who they are. We want to make sure that if we're wiring monies out, for example, that it's getting into the right hands of the right person. There may be extra steps that they have to go through, but it's not because we're being difficult. It's because we want to make sure that they're protected along with us and along with everybody else. So that's probably one that buyers and sellers could be aware of, but also compliance. I mean, everything, it's getting more and more of a cover your jobs, cover your your tushes. But it's everything is getting compliance. So again, maybe more closing documents to sign, and it may be the one that you signed just a few pages ago. But again, we're just making sure that everything is compliant and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite things. Oh, sorry, Nate, go ahead.
When it comes to even wire fraud, I always tell my clients, even if we're meeting for the very first time and they want to take us on as their realtors, I always tell them, hey, when the time comes, you will never get wire instructions from me through email or from the title company. We're always going to be working with you step by step when that time comes. You're going to hear from me. We're going to walk you through it. And then I tell them, of course, throughout the process as well. But it's highly important for agents to be communicating this with their clients.
Yeah. Yep. That's the best prevention is up front, right? Get out in front of things. But yeah, you just mentioned, signing there more documents coming, and I've always joked, and I've heard Nate comment on it too. It's like, hey, sign this document saying that you signed that document.
Yes.
That's the way it feels.
That's exactly right.
But they are relevant. Real quick story. It was not with you guys. It was with a different title insurance company. I'm sorry. This was long ago, but I had a closing, again, not my clients. So I had to actually hear about it from the other person, but they're signing all their documents, blah, blah, blah. They get everything done. And, here come at the end, we're all sitting there at the table, and here's, the checks for the seller gets his check and blah, blah, blah. And the seller goes, I took out a loan on this property yesterday and you didn't find it. And now we're closed. You can't get me. And there is a document you sign, unfortunately, at closing says that you didn't do that.
That's right. That's right.
That would be fraud. And so this guy, I'm sure, I was not in the room when his face would have gone huh? I have to pay that? Yes, you do. So yeah, trying to get one over on the title insurance company, not a good idea. Shame.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I apologize to listeners. I call him Hooten. That just came out automatically, but call him Adam if you're professional, clearly I'm not. But Hooten, this has been a really insightful conversation, man. I really, really enjoyed it. I think for all listeners, I know we have a lot of realtors, other people in the real estate industry that listen to the podcast, but we have a lot of end consumers as well. That are listening. And so I think this is really going to help them understand what title insurance does, because that is definitely a question that we get. Before we wrap up, is there any other piece of information or something you'd like to touch on?
Yeah, you mentioned consumers, and a lot of people don't really know a lot of what we do behind the scenes. I mean, you guys do because we work with you on a daily basis, but I guess from a buyer and seller standpoint, just trust that we're going to do what we do. And, you know, it's our job to make sure that that title is clear, to make sure that those documents get recorded. And that's what title insurance does. So if we miss something, if we close and we missed a judgment or we didn't get a payoff done, it's not on you. It's not on your agent. It's not on your lender. It's on us as a title company. That's what title insurance does. We file a claim, we get it taken care of and corrected, and we go on. So just know that with title insurance, you're going to be protected no matter what happens. So that'd probably be just kind of more education than anything down the road for everybody.
For sure. And if someone has more questions about title insurance or if they need assistance, what's the best way for them to reach you?
My email is Hooten@meridiantitle.com, and my office number is 574-298. No, that's my cell phone number. I'll just get that.
Call that.
Yeah, call my cell phone, 574-298-4695.
There you go. And again, we're going to have your information posted as well. So if people have follow-up questions, whether they be the end consumer or other agents,
Sure,
they're going to be able to get a hold of you for this. So Adam, man, thank you so much again for joining us here on the Realty Rundown.
you bet, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, dude, you're so welcome. Honestly, this, like I said, this was above and beyond. I even learned some new things today, and I've been doing this for it feels like forever. So, guys, if you're listening out there and you found the episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, follow us. We've always got more real estate insights coming.
Yeah. And if you guys have any more real estate questions, reach out to the Nic Wyse team. We're here to help.
All right, guys, that's it for today's episode of the Realty Rundown from the Nic Wyse team. Thank you for listening. And remember, Nick knows, get wise replies. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.